The city skyline glittered against the night sky, the lights of Lancaster Tower reflecting the empire that Evelyn Lancaster had built alongside her late husband. Wealth was second nature to her, but for Evelyn, the true measure of success was not the size of her bank account, it was the loyalty and integrity of her family. And lately, Evelyn's once trusted instincts whispered of danger. Her son, James Lancaster, had married Victoria Langley 6 months ago, a woman whose beauty could command a room and whose smile seemed tailored to charm every man in sight. Evelyn had watched from afar, careful not to reveal her suspicions. Victoria was a careful actress herself, elegant, polite, and endlessly charming, but Evelyn had learned that charm could mask the deadliest intentions. One evening, seated in her private study surrounded by leather-bound ledgers and framed photographs of the Lancaster lineage, Evelyn studied a recent file on Victoria. Expense reports, emails, subtle mentions of financial interest, small hints that spoke louder than words. Victoria had been quick to insert herself into every aspect of James's life, insisting on attending meetings and social functions, and Evelyn had noticed the pattern, each move designed to isolate James from the people who truly cared for him. Evelyn's sharp gray eyes narrowed. She must be tested. She must be revealed. The plan formed as naturally as breathing. Evelyn would feign a medical condition, she would pretend to be deaf and mute. By rendering herself seemingly helpless, Victoria's true intentions would surface. And if she dared to attempt anything further, Evelyn would be prepared to act decisively, protecting her son and her empire. The first day of the masquerade began quietly. Evelyn arrived at Lancaster Tower in understated attire, a soft cashmere sweater and slacks, her hair tied loosely. She moved slowly, deliberately, a cane in her hand to sell the illusion of frailty. Security guards, accustomed to her commanding presence, barely glanced at her as she entered, believing she had come merely to spend time with James after a late dinner. No one would suspect she could see or hear everything perfectly. Inside, Victoria was hosting a small gathering in the Lancaster penthouse, a circle of high society friends chatting and laughing. She spotted Evelyn and froze momentarily, a polite smile masking the flicker of irritation. Evelyn had never truly liked Victoria, but now, in this moment, she watched her carefully. Every gesture, every glance would be scrutinized. "Mother," James greeted warmly, rising to embrace Evelyn. "You're early tonight." Evelyn smiled softly, leaning slightly on her cane. She shook her head, making no sound. Victoria's eyes flicked toward Evelyn, curiosity mingled with disdain. James glanced between them. "She's not speaking?" Victoria's lips pursed. "I suppose she's resting her voice." Her tone was deliberate, just enough to convey a mix of politeness and subtle condescension. Evelyn allowed a small nod, her eyes gleaming with amusement. Inside, she was acutely aware of every whispered remark and every calculated smile. Victoria had no idea that Evelyn could hear her inner thoughts, could read the subtle tension in her gestures. As the evening progressed, Victoria took the lead in conversation, directing attention to herself while subtly undermining those around her. She laughed at jokes that weren't funny, complimented people whose flattery benefited her, and skillfully maneuvered James away from his family and closest friends. Evelyn observed silently, her expression serene but her mind working like a finely tuned machine. Dinner was served in the grand dining hall, a room adorned with crystal chandeliers and fine china. Evelyn, seated at the head of the table opposite James, feigned difficulty in handling her cutlery, prompting Victoria to lean over, offering assistance. "My dear, let me help you," Victoria said sweetly, her voice syrupy. Evelyn's eyes held Victoria's gaze, sharp as a blade. She let the hand linger over hers for a fraction of a second, enough to make Victoria believe she was in control, then withdrew. A subtle flick of the eye indicated Evelyn's awareness, the unspoken warning that she saw everything. Later, when James retired to his study, Evelyn remained behind under the pretense of needing rest in her suite. Victoria lingered, ostensibly to check on her mother-in-law, but truly to assert dominance. "Mother," Victoria began, her voice soft, "I hope you're comfortable here. I've ensured everything is perfect for you." Evelyn regarded her silently, raising one eyebrow, her expression neutral. Victoria interpreted the silence as appreciation and continued, "James, he's so lucky to have a wife who cares about him, don't you think?" A faint, almost imperceptible twitch of Evelyn's lips betrayed her amusement. Inside, she thought, careful, Victoria. Every move you make is observed. That night, as the city's lights shimmered against the darkness, Evelyn reviewed her plan. She would continue this ruse, pretending deafness and muteness, cultivating the illusion of frailty while secretly observing Victoria. Each meal, each conversation, each meeting was an opportunity to uncover the truth. She would even test Victoria with small temptations, subtle hints that wealth was vulnerable, carefully planted to see if Victoria's greed would show. Meanwhile, James, oblivious to his mother's elaborate scheme, continued his life, torn between loyalty to his wife and the growing admiration for a woman from his past, Emma Reynolds, an old college friend who had re-entered his life. Emma had returned unexpectedly for business, and their encounters were brief but charged with unspoken tension. James noticed her presence in ways he hadn't anticipated, her quick wit, her subtle charm, her unwavering sincerity. The next morning, Evelyn walked through Lancaster Tower's private corridors, her cane clicking softly against the marble. She passed Victoria, who was busy arranging a series of meetings for James. Victoria's eyes flicked toward Evelyn, noting the small, deliberate gestures she made to appear incapable, deliberate fumbling with papers, subtle delays in movement. "You really shouldn't strain yourself," Victoria said, the sweetness in her voice hiding the edge of calculation. "I can take care of everything for you." Evelyn simply inclined her head, her eyes never leaving Victoria's. "Every word you utter, every action you take, will be remembered." By midday, Evelyn had observed enough to start her subtle tests. At lunch, she accidentally knocked over a glass of water near James, pretending difficulty in reaching for a napkin. Victoria's reaction was telling. She hesitated, glanced around, then chose to step back rather than assist, her hand brushing her designer bag delicately as though afraid the frail woman might soil it. Evelyn's lips curled in satisfaction. "The first test confirms my suspicions." Over the following weeks, Evelyn escalated her plan. She arranged subtle financial documents on the dining table, casually leaving mention of wealth transfer options visible while pretending to nap. She watched Victoria's eyes flicker to the documents repeatedly, noting the quick calculation and slight excitement. Evelyn smiled inwardly. Victoria was indeed a woman of ambition and greed. Meanwhile, James found himself increasingly drawn to Emma. Their encounters were small, shared coffee, business discussions, brief moments in the office, but tension simmered beneath every word. Emma's kindness contrasted sharply with Victoria's ambition. James began noticing how effortless Emma's laughter was, how genuine her concern appeared, and how much he enjoyed her company without the games and manipulation he saw in Victoria. One evening, a charity gala brought all three women together. Victoria wore a glittering gown, her every move designed to captivate attention. Evelyn, in understated elegance, appeared to struggle with her hearing and speech, requiring James's assistance to navigate the room. Emma, radiant yet simple, captured James's attention in ways Victoria could not. Victoria attempted subtle sabotage, whispering misleading information to James and intercepting conversations. Evelyn observed silently, noting every misstep. The layers of deception and observation intertwined like a chess game, Evelyn manipulating appearances, Victoria scheming, and James unknowingly torn between loyalty and growing feelings for Emma. During the gala, Evelyn initiated a subtle test. She'd accidentally poured a small amount of wine into James's glass that had been slightly adulterated, not enough to harm but enough to monitor reactions. Victoria, watching closely, reacted with keen interest, anticipating a change in James's behavior. Evelyn noticed Victoria's glee, confirming her ambition and lack of moral restraint. Meanwhile, James excused himself to speak privately with Emma. Their conversation was brief, intimate, a subtle brush of hands, shared laughter, and lingering glances that spoke volumes. James felt an unexpected warmth, a magnetic pull toward Emma that Victoria could not replicate. Evelyn, observing from a distance, noted the connection approvingly. Perhaps this will be part of the test as well. The night concluded with subtle tension, unresolved feelings, and layered scheming. Evelyn retired to her suite, reviewing every interaction, every glance, every smile. Her plan had begun successfully, revealing cracks in Victoria's facade. The masquerade was underway, and Evelyn's patience, cunning, and strategic deception promised to unravel the truth in time. As the city slept beneath the blanket of night, Evelyn's mind raced with possibilities. Each action, each test, each observation brought her closer to the ultimate goal, exposing Victoria's greed, protecting her son, and, if necessary, eliminating threats to the Lancaster legacy. The game had begun. And Evelyn Lancaster would win. The morning sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Lancaster Tower, gilding the penthouse with gold. Evelyn Lancaster, her appearance carefully maintaining the facade of frailty, glided slowly along the polished marble floor. Every movement was deliberate, every gesture designed to reinforce her pretense of deafness and muteness. But behind those calm, calculating eyes, a storm of strategy and deception brewed. Victoria Langley, oblivious to Evelyn's intentions, was already at the dining table, reviewing documents in a pristine folder. The sharp click of her designer heels announced her presence long before Evelyn reached the room. "Mother," Victoria said sweetly, glancing up, "I've prepared your breakfast. It's your favorite, smoked salmon with a side of avocado toast." Evelyn inclined her head, signaling silent gratitude. Victoria interpreted the gesture as satisfaction with her service, unaware that Evelyn could hear every thought that crossed her mind. Ambitious. Calculating. Greedy. Evelyn noted each trait, each micro-expression, committing it to memory for later testing. James entered shortly after, a crisp navy suit perfectly tailored, a briefcase in hand. He paused, noticing Evelyn, the cane, the slow movements. His concern was evident. "Mother, are you all right?" he asked, worry lacing his tone. Evelyn gave a slight nod, acknowledging him without breaking her silent act. James looked to Victoria, whose smile radiated reassurance. "She's fine, James. Really. I'm taking good care of her." Evelyn's eyes flickered toward Victoria, reading the subtle possessiveness in her expression. The control Victoria tried to assert was palpable, and Evelyn savored it. "Good. That arrogance will be your undoing." That afternoon, Evelyn executed the next stage of her plan. She had acquired a slow-acting, barely detectable toxin that would subtly weaken James over time. It was not lethal in a single dose, but over days, it would induce mild fatigue, disorientation, and minor physical symptoms, enough to reveal who truly cared for him. At lunch, Evelyn poured a small measure of the toxin into James's glass of mineral water, doing so with precision so that the change in taste was imperceptible. Victoria, watching, raised an eyebrow, curious about Evelyn's seemingly meticulous attention to detail. James took a sip, noting nothing unusual. He complimented Victoria on her choice of wine and discussed business matters briefly, entirely unaware that Evelyn had begun her subtle experiment. Later, in the study, James leaned back in his leather chair, rubbing his temples. "I don't know why I feel so drained today," he murmured, glancing toward Evelyn, who pretended to nap in her chaise lounge. Victoria's hand rested lightly on his arm. "Perhaps you're overworked," Victoria suggested smoothly. "You should let me take care of more of your responsibilities. I only want what's best for you," Evelyn observed keenly. Victoria's gaze lingered on James, not on him with concern, but on the wealth he represented. She whispered in a half-hearted tone about his health, yet her focus was calculating, anticipating her own gain. Evelyn's lips curved into the smallest, almost imperceptible smile. "The second test is confirming everything." Meanwhile, Emma Reynolds arrived at Lancaster Tower for a consulting meeting regarding a charity James supported. Their encounter was electric yet understated. James, weary from the subtle effects of Evelyn's poisoning, found solace in Emma's steady presence. "James, you look tired," Emma said softly, concern in her voice as she held a folder of reports. "I feel off," James admitted, rubbing his temples again. "I can't quite explain it." Emma's touch was gentle, her fingers brushing his arm lightly as she passed him a document. "You need to take care of yourself," she said. "Don't let anyone manipulate or overwork you, even if they seem well-meaning." James looked at her, startled by the clarity of her concern. Unlike Victoria, her attention was not to control or charm but to genuinely help. A warmth bloomed inside him, a feeling he hadn't realized he was missing. Evelyn watched discreetly from a distance, silently approving Emma's presence. She made a mental note. Victoria's greed was clear, and Emma's genuine care would be a stark contrast when the time came for confrontation. Unaware that Evelyn observed every interaction, Victoria grew bolder. She invited James to a private dinner at an exclusive restaurant, claiming it was to celebrate a recent business success. Evelyn, feigning fatigue, stayed behind, ostensibly unable to join. Victoria's intentions were layered. She planned to subtly encourage James to sign a series of business transfers that would funnel wealth into accounts controlled by her and her accomplice, Richard Hayes. Her charm was exquisite. She smiled, leaned close, and laughed at every joke, all while carefully masking her ambition. Back at the penthouse, Evelyn monitored the situation via discreet messages from Clara Morgan, her personal assistant. Clara relayed updates. James seemed unusually relaxed, slightly groggy from the slow-acting poison. Victoria was maneuvering expertly, but Evelyn's tests were proving effective. The woman's ambition and lack of genuine affection for her husband were undeniable. Evelyn plotted her next move, small, controlled doses of poison, each with specific timing to induce mild symptoms during moments when Victoria could be observed. This way, Evelyn could distinguish true concern from calculated greed. During the week, James and Emma found themselves working late together on the charity project. They shared quiet conversations in the grand office, moments filled with unspoken attraction. A subtle brush of hands as they passed papers, lingering eye contact across the table, small smiles that revealed deeper emotions. James felt conflicted. Victoria was his wife, legally bound to him, yet Emma's presence awakened emotions he had long suppressed. Evelyn, watching from a distance, allowed a faint smile. The heart often reveals the truth the mind cannot see. One evening, after a particularly long work session, James confessed quietly, "Emma, I feel something I can't explain." Emma's hand touched his lightly, sending a shiver down his spine. "James, sometimes the heart knows what it wants before we do. But you must be careful. People, they will try to deceive you." Evelyn's eyes glimmered in approval. This was part of the plan. The contrast between genuine love and calculated greed would soon be revealed. Evelyn orchestrated her first explicit test. During a formal family brunch, she deliberately spilled a small amount of wine onto the floor while pretending to be unable to move quickly enough to clean it. Guests gasped, and Victoria's reaction was telling. Instead of offering assistance, Victoria hesitated, eyeing the mess as if calculating the cost of helping. Then she smiled at James, feigning concern, yet her hands remained empty of effort. Evelyn's sharp gaze noted the exact moment her greed overtook any semblance of genuine care. Evelyn also introduced a subtle financial scenario, casually leaving a document suggesting James might sign over partial control of the company to Victoria. She watched Victoria's eyes flicker, the slight tightening of her jaw revealing desire and anticipation. Evelyn's lips curled. Confirmed. Meanwhile, James remained unaware, distracted by Emma's presence and increasingly fatigued from the poison. His feelings of confusion and subtle attraction to Emma deepened, a silent tug-of-war between love and duty. Clara Morgan, ever loyal, recorded subtle details for Evelyn. She noticed the exact tone of Victoria's voice, the strategic placement of her hands, the tiny smiles at James that masked underlying calculation. Clara also observed James's growing emotional distance from Victoria, the subtle glances he gave Emma during meetings and dinners. Evelyn used this information to refine her strategy. Victoria was ambitious but impatient, prone to mistakes when pushed. James, vulnerable due to mild poisoning and his divided affections, provided the perfect scenario for testing loyalty. One night, Victoria intercepted a call intended for Evelyn, hearing her speak faintly on the phone with Clara. Though she believed Evelyn to be deaf and mute, Victoria's instincts screamed that something was wrong. That suspicion led to subtle attempts to test Evelyn, leaving minor incriminating accidental notes, watching her reactions, and probing for information. Evelyn, anticipating this, pretended confusion and continued her silent observations. Victoria's impatience grew, and her carefully constructed charm began to show cracks. As James spent more time with Emma, their connection deepened. They shared a quiet dinner after a charity event, their conversation shifting from business to personal dreams, hopes, and past regrets. Emma's laughter, genuine and unforced, contrasted sharply with Victoria's calculated smiles. James reached for her hand across the table, a small but deliberate gesture. Emma's hand met his, lingering just long enough to ignite a spark neither could deny. Evelyn, observing discreetly from another room via surveillance, allowed herself a rare smile. Let the heart show its truth. It will guide the final judgment. By the end of the week, James's symptoms, fatigue, slight dizziness, occasional headaches, grew more pronounced, but never enough to alarm Victoria outwardly. Only Evelyn and Clara noticed the subtle deterioration, confirming the poison's slow, controlled effect. This allowed Evelyn to observe Victoria's reactions more closely. Would she genuinely care for her husband's health, or focus solely on her own gain? As expected, Victoria's concern remained superficial, measured, and self-serving. Evelyn's plan was unfolding perfectly. The city lights glittered below Lancaster Tower as Evelyn Lancaster observed her son, James, from a distance, her carefully constructed facade of deafness and muteness maintaining its perfection. Every small sigh, every subtle grimace of fatigue, every flicker of irritation on James's face was evidence that her plan was working. The slow-acting poison she had administered was doing its job, weakening him just enough to reveal the true nature of those surrounding him. Victoria Langley was oblivious to the careful orchestration. She continued her relentless pursuit of control, her charm masking the growing impatience she felt. She arranged private meetings with James under the guise of concern, her hand grazing his arm more than necessary, her laughter a little too forced, her compliments carefully calculated. Each move was designed to manipulate him, to ensure her access to his wealth and position. James felt it, the subtle drain on his energy, the minor disorientation that seemed inexplicable. Each day, he woke with a slight headache, a heaviness in his limbs, a faint dizziness he could not trace. At first, he dismissed it as stress, exhaustion from running the family company, and the constant demands placed upon him by his new wife. But gradually, the symptoms intensified. Emma Reynolds noticed immediately. During their late-night work session in the penthouse office, she placed a gentle hand on his arm. "James, you're not well," she said softly. "You should rest. You shouldn't push yourself like this." James gave a faint smile, attempting to mask the discomfort. "I'm fine, Emma. Just tired." Emma's gaze pierced through his attempt at reassurance. "You're not fine. Something is wrong. Please, let me help you." James hesitated, torn between loyalty to Victoria, his duty as a husband, and the undeniable trust and care he felt for Emma. He was beginning to see the difference, the genuine concern in Emma's actions compared to Victoria's performative gestures. Evelyn watched from a nearby room, disguised as the frail, deaf-mute matriarch. Her eyes were sharp, analyzing every expression, every micro-movement. The tests are revealing the truth. Victoria's patience began to wane. She sensed James's growing attachment to Emma, though she could not yet name the cause. One evening, she arranged a private dinner at an exclusive restaurant, ostensibly to celebrate James's leadership at the company. The table was set meticulously, candlelight, crystal glasses, silverware arranged with precision. Victoria leaned in, her hand brushing James's as she laughed at a story he told, her gaze lingering a little too long. James, weakened subtly by the poison, found the charm grating, the laughter hollow. He excused himself to the restroom, his steps unsteady. Victoria followed, feigning concern. "James, are you all right?" she asked, her voice a mixture of sweetness and controlled panic. James looked at her, his expression pained. I don't feel well," he admitted, leaning slightly against the wall. Victoria's eyes darted around, calculating. She subtly tried to steer the conversation back to herself, to ensure that his attention remained on her. But James's mind was elsewhere, drawn inexplicably to Emma, to her warmth, her honesty, her care. Unbeknownst to Victoria, Evelyn had anticipated this scenario. The poison's slow effect ensured James would display subtle signs of weakness without endangering his life, creating a natural test of Victoria's genuine concern. Meanwhile, Emma's role became increasingly significant. She noticed James's fatigue, his slight disorientation, and insisted on accompanying him to company meetings, ensuring he rested, drank water, and avoided unnecessary stress. During a late-night strategy session, James felt a hand brush his forehead, checking for fever. "Emma," he murmured, taken aback by her attentiveness. "You're burning out," Emma replied softly. "Let me help." "You don't have to do this alone." James's heart pounded. No one had ever cared for him this way. Victoria's affection had always been calculated, measured, and self-serving. Emma's was different, effortless, genuine, and wholly unselfish. Evelyn, hidden in plain sight, observed every moment with satisfaction. This will make the final revelation even more stark. Victoria, growing increasingly frustrated with James's slow recovery and his lingering thoughts of Emma, decided to escalate her manipulations. She began planting rumors within the company, subtly undermining Emma's reputation while positioning herself as the indispensable wife and partner to James. At a formal board meeting, Victoria praised James's leadership excessively, drawing attention to her own support, while subtly casting Emma as an outsider. She leaned in close to James, whispering advice that suggested Emma's intentions were opportunistic. James, still weakened, felt torn. Evelyn's subtle dosing had made him slightly fatigued, less able to counter Victoria's manipulations immediately. But his growing awareness of Emma's genuine care strengthened his internal compass. He began to see Victoria's intentions for what they truly were. Evelyn continued her careful orchestration. The poison was administered in small doses during meals, carefully timed to coincide with moments when Victoria was present. Evelyn observed Victoria's reactions closely, noting her impatience, her strategic positioning, and her subtle attempts to manipulate James's behavior. Evelyn also introduced subtle temptations, hinting at vulnerable financial assets while feigning helplessness. She watched as Victoria's eyes sparkled with interest, her hands unconsciously flexing as though she were already imagining control over the empire. "It's working. The mask will fall." One evening, James and Emma shared a private moment in the penthouse garden. The city lights glittered around them, casting soft reflections on the water fountain at the center of the terrace. "James, you shouldn't shoulder everything alone," Emma whispered, her hand brushing his. "You deserve someone who truly cares for you, without ulterior motives." James looked into her eyes, the fatigue from the poison mingling with the emotional pull he felt toward her. "Emma. I don't know what to do," he admitted, his voice low and raw. I feel drawn to you, and yet. You're not betraying anyone," Emma said softly. "You're recognizing what's real." Their hands intertwined, a spark igniting that neither could ignore. James leaned closer, brushing his lips against hers in a tentative, lingering kiss that conveyed both longing and restraint. The moment was charged, intimate, and undeniable, a contrast to the calculated interactions he had with Victoria. Evelyn, observing from a discreet vantage point, allowed herself a rare moment of approval. The heart cannot be deceived. The contrast will be clear. The tension reached a climax one morning when James collapsed slightly in the boardroom, fatigue and mild dizziness from the poison evident. Victoria's immediate reaction was telling, her hands hovered uncertainly, her gaze flickered between concern and calculation. She called for assistance but remained hesitant, careful not to compromise her own position. Emma rushed forward instinctively, her hands steady, her voice gentle. "James, sit down. You need rest. Let me help you." James's eyes met Emma's, relief washing over him. Evelyn's sharp gaze observed the subtle power dynamic shift, Victoria's hesitation contrasted starkly with Emma's genuine care. Later, Evelyn entered the room, still maintaining her act. She allowed Victoria a chance to speak, to express concern, to reveal her true intentions. Victoria faltered, her words measured, her charm slipping in small, almost imperceptible ways. Evelyn's lips curled slightly. The first cracks appear. Clara Morgan, Evelyn's ever-loyal assistant, delivered her daily report. She detailed every reaction, every subtle expression, every misstep Victoria had made in her quest to control James and the company. Evelyn reviewed the data meticulously, noting patterns and planning the next phase, a more direct test, one that would expose Victoria fully while protecting James and strengthening his connection with Emma. Evelyn's mind raced. The slow-acting poison had done its job, weakening James just enough to reveal true loyalties, highlighting Victoria's selfishness, and amplifying the contrast between her calculated charm and Emma's genuine affection. The stage is set for the reckoning. Soon, the final reveal will be unavoidable. The penthouse was silent except for the subtle hum of the city below. Evelyn Lancaster moved through the grand halls, her cane tapping lightly against the marble, her every gesture a study in controlled elegance. Her act of frailty, the deafness and muteness, remained flawless. Yet behind the calm exterior, her mind raced with plans, contingencies, and the slow crescendo of justice that would soon fall upon Victoria Langley. James sat in his office, the fatigue from the poison pressing on his limbs, his head slightly bowed as he reviewed the latest financial reports. Each page he turned blurred slightly, the subtle disorientation growing stronger. He didn't understand why he felt this way, why even the smallest tasks demanded so much effort. Emma Reynolds, ever observant, entered quietly, holding a glass of water and a small plate of fresh fruit. "James," she said softly, placing the plate beside him. "You need to eat something. You're overexerting yourself." He looked up at her, startled by the calm care in her eyes. I don't know what's happening to me," he admitted. "I feel weak, dizzy." Emma knelt beside him, her hand brushing his shoulder gently. "You're not imagining it. Let me help. Don't fight it alone." James's eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and longing. This was different. Unlike Victoria's careful, calculated concern, Emma's was pure, unselfish. She was steady, honest, and fully present. He realized he had been blind, distracted by charm and obligation, but now clarity was slowly piercing the fog. Evelyn, observing discreetly from the adjacent lounge, allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The poison was working as planned, subtle was slow, but undeniable, and Victoria's true nature was ready to be exposed. Victoria paced the penthouse late that night, the heels of her designer shoes clicking sharply against the marble floor. She had noticed James leaning toward Emma more and more, the subtle glances, the quiet moments of connection, and it infuriated her. She had worked tirelessly, meticulously crafting every interaction to cement her influence, and now it was slipping. She approached Evelyn under the pretense of concern. "Mother, you should get some rest," she said sweetly, her eyes flickering with impatience. "You look tired. Let me take care of you." Evelyn's eyes met hers, calm and unyielding. She didn't respond verbally, maintaining her silent act. But her gaze was sharp, assessing, and Victoria felt a flicker of unease. She forced a smile, dismissing the warning instincts she couldn't name. Later, during a formal dinner, Evelyn carefully orchestrated a small accident. A glass of wine tipped slightly as she pretended to shift her weight, spilling a few drops onto the tablecloth. Victoria's reaction was immediate and revealing. She reached for the nearest napkin but hesitated, glancing quickly at James as if calculating the optics of her assistance. She cleaned just enough to appear concerned, but her focus was on preserving her image rather than genuinely helping. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, taking note of every hesitation, every flicker of self-interest. The mask is slipping. Meanwhile, James and Emma shared stolen moments that deepened their bond. In the penthouse garden, the city lights twinkling below, their hands brushed, lingered, and intertwined. James's fatigue from the poison made him more vulnerable, more honest with his emotions. "Emma," he whispered one night, his voice low and vulnerable, "I feel drawn to you in a way I never expected. I can't explain it, but it's real." Emma placed her hand over his, warmth radiating from her touch. "James, sometimes the heart knows the truth before the mind does. You deserve someone who sees you, truly sees you, not someone who only wants your wealth." Their lips met in a tentative kiss, hesitant yet filled with a longing that had been building for weeks. The tension, the danger, the uncertainty, all melted in that moment, revealing what had been hidden under layers of deception. Evelyn watched from the shadows, satisfaction blooming. The contrast could not have been clearer, genuine love versus calculated ambition. Victoria's moment of reckoning was approaching. Victoria, growing desperate, attempted to escalate her manipulations. She confronted James privately, attempting to convince him that Emma was ambitious and opportunistic. She leaned close, her perfume intoxicating, her smile perfect, her words smooth. "James, you need to be careful," she said softly. "Emma isn't who she appears to be. You're vulnerable, and people like her, they take advantage of weakness." James, weakened by the poison, struggled to process the conversation. But something inside him, a quiet clarity reinforced by weeks of observation, told him otherwise. He had seen Emma's care, her sincerity, and the stark difference between her actions and Victoria's performative concern. Meanwhile, Evelyn had arranged subtle surveillance. Clara Morgan, Evelyn's assistant, documented everything: Victoria's gestures, the timing of her glances, the micro-expressions that betrayed her ambition. Evelyn reviewed the footage, each moment confirming what she already suspected. Victoria's greed would be her undoing. By midweek, James's symptoms became more pronounced. Mild dizziness, fatigue, slight nausea, but never enough to raise alarm. Each symptom was perfectly timed to coincide with moments when Victoria could be observed for her reaction. Victoria's impatience grew. She began to show signs of frustration, her carefully maintained composure slipping in fleeting, almost imperceptible ways. Evelyn noted each detail, planning the final act of exposure. Soon, the truth will be undeniable. Emma, noticing Victoria's growing intensity, attempted to shield James from both emotional manipulation and subtle sabotage. One evening, she intercepted Victoria attempting to influence a critical business decision. "Victoria, this isn't right," Emma said firmly. "James needs to make decisions based on facts and his own judgment, not your pressure or manipulation." Victoria's eyes flashed with irritation and thinly veiled rage. "Emma, you think you know better? You don't understand what's at stake." Emma stood her ground, unwavering, her courage revealing the contrast between true concern and selfish ambition. Evelyn watched silently, approving every measured step. Emma's integrity and courage were critical to the plan's success. Evelyn orchestrated the first major confrontation during a company gala. The room glittered with chandeliers, laughter, and carefully curated smiles. James, still slightly weakened, attended reluctantly, with Emma by his side. Victoria attempted to charm the attendees, subtly drawing attention to herself as the devoted wife. Evelyn, seated in plain view but still maintaining her frail facade, allowed a carefully timed moment to occur. She accidentally dropped a set of delicate crystal glasses near Victoria. The table tipped slightly, and the wine began to spill. Victoria's reaction was immediate: she froze, torn between genuine concern and the instinct to preserve her image. Evelyn's sharp eyes noted every hesitation, every flicker of calculation. Meanwhile, Emma moved with instinctive grace, helping stabilize the table and assist James. The contrast was undeniable. Whispers began to ripple through the room. Observers noticed the difference between genuine care and superficial charm. Evelyn's plan was working, the truth would soon be evident to all. After the gala, James and Emma shared a quiet moment on the balcony, the city lights reflecting their emotions. "Emma, I don't know what I would do without you," James admitted, voice low and raw. "You've been the one constant, the one truth in all of this." Emma's hand rested on his cheek, her touch warm and steady. "James, love isn't about convenience or appearance. It's about honesty, trust, and care. You've always known the truth, you just needed to see it clearly." Their lips met again, a kiss deepened by the intensity of the week, by danger, manipulation, and the vulnerability James now felt. Evelyn, observing from her private suite, allowed herself a rare, genuine smile. The heart cannot be deceived. Back at Lancaster Tower, Evelyn and Clara reviewed the evidence of Victoria's manipulations. Every hesitation, every flicker of impatience, every moment of self-serving concern was documented. Evelyn planned the final exposure carefully, ensuring that Victoria could not recover, that James would finally see the truth, and that Emma's genuine love would be unmistakable. Victoria, unaware that she was being observed, continued her manipulations, pushing the limits of deception, unaware that the culmination of Evelyn's plan was imminent. The stage was set. The poison, the observations, the contrasting truths, all were converging for the final act. Evelyn's silence, her pretense, and her meticulous strategy had created a perfect storm. Victoria's greed, ambition, and duplicity would soon be exposed, leaving James free to recognize the true love that had been standing beside him all along. The morning sun poured through the tall windows of Lancaster Tower, illuminating the polished marble floors and reflecting off the city below. Evelyn Lancaster sat quietly in the grand lounge, her cane resting against her chair, her hands folded neatly. Her active frailty, the deafness and muteness, remained impeccable, yet behind the serene expression, her mind raced. Today would be the day. The day Victoria Langley's carefully constructed deception would crumble, the day James would finally see the truth, and the day Emma's loyalty and love would be fully recognized. James, still subtly weakened by the slow-acting poison, was guided gently into the room by Emma. Her hand on his arm steadied him, her presence a calm, grounding force. His eyes met Evelyn's, a mix of gratitude and curiosity evident. "Mother, are you ready for this?" James whispered, his voice soft, vulnerable. Evelyn's lips curved into a faint smile, imperceptible to anyone else. More than ready, she thought. Victoria arrived at Lancaster Tower that morning, radiant in designer clothes, perfectly styled hair, and a confident smile. She believed she had control, that James's lingering fatigue was nothing more than stress, that Emma's influence was inconsequential. She had no idea the intricate web of observation, calculation, and patient orchestration was about to ensnare her completely. She entered the lounge with calculated grace, smiling at James. "Darling, you look tired. Are you well?" she asked, her tone dripping with feigned concern. James allowed himself a moment, then looked past her, his gaze catching Emma's. He saw her steady presence, her calm eyes, and the genuine care in her every gesture. A seed of clarity sprouted. Victoria's concern felt hollow, her charm a thin veneer. Evelyn rose slowly, moving to the center of the room, cane tapping lightly against the marble. Her gaze locked on Victoria, her eyes sharp and unyielding. For the first time, Victoria felt a flicker of unease. Evelyn's calm demeanor, so carefully maintained, carried an unspoken weight. Evelyn gestured subtly, and Clara Morgan entered, carrying a folder thick with documents, photographs, and digital printouts. She placed it on the table with a quiet authority. Evelyn motioned for James to come closer. "James," Evelyn said softly, finally breaking her silence, "it is time you see the truth. Not all that glitters is gold. Some smiles hide ambition, and some words conceal betrayal." Victoria's lips parted slightly in surprise. She tried to recover her composure, but the tension in the room was palpable. Clara opened the folder and began presenting the evidence. Financial discrepancies carefully orchestrated to mimic James's own accounts. Emails and messages Victoria had sent, revealing her attempts to manipulate decisions in her favor. Subtle documentation of Victoria's lack of genuine concern during James's moments of weakness. Video footage of Victoria at social events, prioritizing image over care, the contrast with Emma's genuine attentiveness glaringly obvious. Victoria's composure faltered. Her perfectly crafted image, the mask of love and devotion she had worn for months, began to crack. Her voice, usually smooth and commanding, quavered slightly. "James, this isn't, you don't understand," she stammered, the panic rising. James, still slightly weakened but mentally clear, studied her. For the first time, he saw her ambition, her self-interest, the careful calculation behind every smile, every gesture. The pieces fell into place, the subtle manipulations, the half-truths, the pressure to isolate him from Emma. Evelyn stepped forward, her gaze piercing. "Victoria, your time is over. The game is revealed, the intentions are clear. Your ambition has been documented, and your carelessness in attempting to manipulate James will have consequences." Victoria's panic escalated further when Evelyn revealed the subtle, slow-acting measure she had implemented, the gradual dosing of a safe, medically controlled compound to highlight moments of weakness and reveal true loyalty. "You believed James's fatigue would go unnoticed, that your manipulations would remain hidden," Evelyn said, voice calm yet unyielding. "But every gesture, every hesitation, was observed. Every reaction, every flicker of self-interest, was recorded. You underestimated me, and the truth always comes to light. Victoria's face drained of color. She tried to step closer to James, to plead, but the emotional distance was now insurmountable. She had miscalculated the strength of genuine care, the clarity of observation, and the power of integrity. James, leaning slightly on Emma for support, finally spoke. His voice was steady, measured, and filled with conviction. Victoria. I trusted you. I allowed myself to believe in your concern, in your love. But it was all an illusion, a carefully constructed mask. Everything Evelyn has shown me proves that your intentions were self-serving. You were never here for me, you were here for control, for wealth, for influence. I see you now, clearly. Victoria's eyes welled with tears, not from genuine remorse, but from the realization that her carefully built plans were collapsing. She opened her mouth, then closed it, unable to find words that could repair the damage. James turned toward Emma, his expression softening, gratitude and relief evident. Emma, thank you. For everything. For being honest, for being present, for showing me what true care looks like. Emma's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. James, always. I'll always be here. Evelyn allowed the moment to settle before continuing. She revealed Victoria's manipulations in detail to the assembled witnesses, staff members, company executives, and even a few close friends. Each lie, each attempt to control, each act of self-interest was laid bare. Victoria, completely exposed, crumbled. Her ambition, her charm, her manipulations, they were all revealed to the world. There was no escape, no redemption. She had overplayed her hand, underestimated Evelyn's strategy, and failed to recognize the difference between superficial charm and genuine loyalty. After the confrontation, James and Emma found themselves alone in the penthouse garden. The city lights twinkled below, mirroring the relief, joy, and quiet triumph they felt. James took Emma's hands in his. Emma. I don't know how to thank you. You've been my anchor through all of this. I never want to take your care, your honesty, or your love for granted. Emma smiled, a soft warmth radiating from her. You don't need to thank me. Love isn't measured in deeds or words. It's about being present, being true, being there when it matters most. That's what we have. Their lips met in a passionate, lingering kiss, the culmination of weeks of tension, danger, and emotional struggle. The penthouse garden became a sanctuary, a place where vulnerability, love, and trust intertwined. James pulled back slightly, forehead resting against hers. Emma. I want to build a life with you. A life filled with honesty, trust, and love. No manipulation, no deceit, just us. Emma nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. Yes, James. Just us. Evelyn, watching discreetly from the shadows, allowed herself a rare, satisfied smile. The plan had succeeded, the deceit was exposed, the malicious ambition vanquished, and the true love between James and Emma was free to flourish. Victoria's exposure had consequences. Her position in the company was terminated immediately, her influence nullified. The staff, previously intimidated by her charm, rallied behind James and Emma, grateful for clarity and leadership grounded in honesty. Evelyn's true role was finally revealed, not as a frail, helpless matriarch, but as a brilliant strategist, a protector of her family, and a force capable of seeing the truth behind appearances. The slow-acting poison had never endangered James's life, it had merely been a tool to reveal genuine loyalty and test character. James, now fully aware of Victoria's intentions and Emma's unwavering support, felt a sense of liberation. He was free to lead the company with clarity, supported by love, honesty, and integrity. In the weeks following Victoria's removal, James and Emma's relationship blossomed. They shared quiet mornings in the penthouse garden, laughter over shared meals, and tender nights filled with whispered promises and heartfelt confessions. One evening, under the city lights, James knelt before Emma, offering a simple, elegant ring. Emma Reynolds, will you marry me? Tears of joy streamed down Emma's cheeks. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Their kiss sealed the promise, the culmination of trials, revelations, and love that had withstood deception, ambition, and danger. Evelyn, observing from the corner of the room, allowed herself a contented sigh. Her son was safe, the manipulator exposed, and true love had prevailed. Justice, truth, and love finally aligned. The city lights shimmered below Lancaster Tower, reflecting a new beginning. Victoria's greed had been vanquished, James's clarity restored, and Emma's love firmly established as the guiding force in his life. As we reach the end of this captivating tale, we hope you've been transported to new worlds and inspired by the characters and stories that have unfolded before your eyes. Timeless Stories is more than just a YouTube channel, it's a community of story lovers who share a passion for exploring the human experience through the art of storytelling. By subscribing to our channel, you'll be treated to a wide range of stories that will captivate your imagination, spark your creativity, and inspire you to think differently about the world around you. From timeless classics to modern tales, our stories will transport you to new and exciting worlds, introducing you to characters that will stay with you long after the story ends. But that's not all. By joining our community of story lovers, you'll get access to exclusive content, including behind-the-scenes insights into our storytelling process, sneak peeks at upcoming videos, and opportunities to engage with other fans who share your passion for stories. So why wait? Subscribe to Timeless Stories today and join our growing community of story enthusiasts. Hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest uploads, and let's keep exploring the world of stories together. Whether you're a fan of adventure, romance, science fiction, or fantasy, we have something for everyone. Our stories are designed to inspire, educate, and entertain, and we're committed to bringing you the best content possible. So come along with us on this journey into the world of stories. Subscribe to Timeless Stories now, and let's discover new worlds, meet new characters, and explore the infinite possibilities of the human imagination. Subscribe now and get ready to be transported to new worlds.